It's time to go on the record with WRAL News.
Infrastructure flood and fail. Thank you for being with us for this edition of On the Record. I'm Ashley Rowe. The past month, putting a spotlight on our fragile systems. Our infrastructure is increasingly being tested by severe weather. For the next half hour, we will make sense of how the pieces fit together. And we'll explore what our elected officials are and are not doing to make your community more resilient in this changing climate. In July alone, there were 13 days with measurable rainfall at RDU, a total of 6.26 inches, about an inch and a half more than normal. But it wasn't just rain we dealt with. This is the hottest summer to date on record. That hot air only fueling the growing number of storms in our area, including one storm that led to a days-long outage in Enfield. Widespread outages left residents there without power and electricity, no AC to keep cool. Severe weather took down a tree, which took down the power lines, leading to a transformer to blow and a substation to go offline. A critical piece of the system and its backup both broke.
I'm suffering.
Yeah.
Suffering.
Hot. Miserable.
I'm telling you, being in this heat is something different. I feel like we can be better prepared for situations like this.
When power finally did come back on, WRAL spoke by phone with Enfield's mayor, who was quick to say the town needs more support from the state and federal governments. Listen to how he describes it.
What we are asking people to do, and this is elected officials and people in positions of power at the state, county, and also federal level, especially the federal level, to be considerate as it pertains to where we find ourselves in Enfield, because we are simply a looking glass for what it means to be a rural municipality that has been neglected for so long by administrations at the federal level.
A looking glass for what it means to be a rural municipality that has been neglected for so long. Strong words from Enfield's mayor. I reached out to Representatives Rodney Pierce, who represents Enfield at the state level, and Don Davis, who represents the town at the federal level. Here's my conversation with Representative Pierce. What kind of conversations are you having at your level to try to get Enfield where it needs to be for its infrastructure?
Well, we are having conversations with our federal partners as well as with state partners, even talking to the mayor earlier today, just trying to do everything that we can in our capacity to make sure that we're exploring all of the different options that are available to the town to help it get back to where it needs to be and to also prosper afterwards.
Without getting too much into the weeds, what kind of options are available?
Well, there are grants and there are loans, some low interest, but those are just different things that we're looking into at this moment. There is no, that I know of, discretionary funding that is available, but there are departments such as DEQ at the state level, as well as the Department of Energy at the federal level that we're looking into collaborating with to try to get some assistance for the town.
Enfield was able to get its power back online, get people's air conditioning back going with a temporary solution, but the mayor has talked about how they need a larger fix here, and that's obviously going to cost quite a bit of money.
Yes,
when there's only so much money to be passed around, and we know that other towns, especially in rural communities, are facing very similar challenges, how do you navigate that in trying to advocate for towns within your district to make sure that they are getting the amount of money that they need when there is only that small amount to go around?
And I think that comes through the collaboration at the state level as well as with federal partners. Like I said, I've been on the phone earlier today with the mayor, also talked with people at the federal level, also spoke with people at the state level, and everybody wants to get together and do everything we can to help the town. I also introduced a bill back in March, House Bill 530, that would have funded certain public projects within House District 27, which is Halifax, Northampton, and Warren counties. And this bill asked for an $8 million appropriation to help Enfield towards purchasing or building a new electric grid or electrical grid. And, this is just not a problem here in my district. It's a problem throughout eastern North Carolina, throughout western North Carolina. And it's something, that goes back to, towns that are older. Enfield is the oldest town in Halifax County that have outdated infrastructure, and we have to do what we are supposed to do at the state and county and local and federal levels to make sure that these towns get what they need.
How hard is it to fight for that funding? You mentioned that you introduced a bill. How hard is it to fight for funding for rural communities when so often the larger cities take up a lot more oxygen in the room?
It can be a challenge. Sometimes rural communities get left behind, even though we make up the majority of the state of North Carolina. And I think we have the largest rural population after the state of Texas, if I'm not mistaken. And then, when you look into the history of this part of the state, in terms of that neglect, I believe that's what Mayor Robinson called it in the quotes that I read from him. The name I gave our section of the state was Neglected Northeastern North Carolina, because there have been times that we have been overlooked, that we've been neglected, that we've been counted on to do certain things for others at the state or federal level. But when it comes time to get that return on investment for giving that support, we may not get looked at, or we may get overlooked in general. So it can be a challenge, and that's why we need, powerful and fierce advocates at every level of government to continue pushing to get the resources that we need.
How soon are you expecting, going back to Enfield's power, how soon are you expecting the state to be able to support Enfield in this?
Well, that's up in the air. All I can tell you is that we are continuing to work towards it. We are looking at meeting with people at the federal level to see if we can get some type of assistance for the town. The town also has to do an assessment of the damages, and we're looking to try to get that done within a 30-day window. And once that assessment is done, then we can move forward at a state level to try to get those resources to the town.
Well, we sure hope that can happen in quick order. Appreciate your time here.
Thank you for having me.
As I mentioned, I also reached out to Congressman Don Davis, inviting him to join us on this program. His office said he was traveling and unavailable. After the break, crucial questions after Tropical Storm Chantal. Where is the money after FEMA pulled millions of dollars to help communities improve their infrastructure? And why did it take 10 days to declare a state of emergency? We ask the White House press secretary and the governor. Welcome back. Now we are taking you to other communities hit hard by Tropical Storm Chantal and the staggering estimates they're facing for repairs. The storm dumped inches of rain, causing tens of millions of dollars in damage, prompting a state of emergency. 6 people died. Some residents were forced to flee their homes. Others in multiple towns had to boil water for days because the water treatment plants went offline during the storm. In Southern Pines, the Longleaf Dam failed, leaving gouges in the earth and a muddy mess for people living nearby. The Department of Environmental Quality has long classified the Longleaf Golf Club Dam as high hazard, and it's far from alone. Of the thousands of dams that the DEQ inspects across the state, 158 are classified as both high hazard and poor condition. In the case of the Longleaf Dam, the owner, the U.S. Kids Golf Foundation, was supposed to keep it in good condition. The foundation's president did not directly answer our questions about that. Nearly 100 miles away from Southern Pines, Chantal also hammered the town of Hillsborough. The town's main wastewater pump station flooded, sending 75% of the town's sewage spilling into the Eno River. FEMA awarded Hillsborough $5.81 million to move the pump station out of a flood hazard area. The money came from the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities, or BRIC program, which had awarded more than $200 million for projects across North Carolina. But in April, the Trump administration canceled that program, calling it wasteful and ineffective. The move pulled the funding for Hillsborough and more than a dozen other North Carolina communities that were counting on this. I wanted to find out where the money that was committed to these projects is now that the program's canceled, and how communities can access that through another avenue. I took those questions to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. I want to talk about a program that actually President Trump had created in his first term and has since cut. This is a FEMA program, the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program. 2 weeks ago, flooding from Chantal devastated our area. In Hillsborough, a local community, people had to boil their water for days, in part because something called the River Pump Station flooded. The town has tried to move that station out of a floodplain using funding from FEMA's BRIC program, but it was one of many projects in our state that depended on that money, about $200 million statewide. That program got canceled in April. Why get rid of something that he started? And where is that money now?
Well, look, what I will tell you with respect to FEMA is what the president envisions for this federal agency that has unfortunately for many decades been bogged down by bureaucracy. The president wants to make FEMA more efficient, and he wants state and local governments, so your governor and your state and local elected officials, to lead and make decisions during times of crises. The federal government and the president will be there to provide the resources, but ultimately state and local officials need to make these decisions on the ground. They are closest to the people in your state. But the president has done a great deal for North Carolina. If you recall, it was actually the very first domestic trip he took when he returned to office was to your state in the months following the devastating impact of Hurricane Helene. And he wants to ensure that FEMA provides the resources, but ultimately state and local officials are there on the ground with backup from the federal government, but that they on the ground are leading the charge.
So where does that $200 million in projects funding, where does it go since the program was canceled? These community leaders are needing that money in order to be able to do that pump station relocation, for example. So how do they access that money if the program has been pulled?
Look, as you know, the Department of Homeland Security oversees FEMA, and I know Secretary Noem has heeded the president's call when it comes to dishing out those resources, but making sure that state and local governments are actually implementing those resources on the ground.
All right. So really no clear answers there. You can watch my full interview with Caroline Levitt on our WRAL YouTube page. The BRIC program cancellation has had so much attention, it is now in federal court. 20 states, including North Carolina, are suing FEMA. WRAL's Flynn Snyder has been pressing officials about the damage since the storm hit. He joins us here in studio. Flynn, the Attorney General is now suing FEMA over the cancellation of this BRIC program. Walk us through where things stand with that.
Yeah, so the Attorney General, Jeff Jackson, along with 19 other states, is suing FEMA over the canceling of the BRIC program, essentially a program that helps states better prepare for disasters. One of the projects in Hillsborough is that pump station that was flooded during Chantal. The money would have been helped to move that pump station out of the floodplain of the River. The Attorney General says that FEMA never had the authority to cancel this money, that it was appropriated and allocated by Congress, and so he and more than a dozen other states are now suing to get this funding restored.
You have been to this pump station to tour it. How bad is it?
Yeah, so this pump station is right next to the River, and town officials tell me that it was completely submerged underwater during Tropical Storm Chantal. It's been almost a month since Chantal, and at this point, secondary pumps are still brought in to help move water and wastewater through that pump while repairs are being made. So the pump itself is still not even online yet, more than a month after Chantal hit. Secondary pumps are still being needed to help move wastewater through that facility.
Wow. Now, there's that wastewater facility issue, but there are also so many other people who have experienced significant damage from Chantal. You spoke with them. How are things going for them?
That's right. You think of elsewhere in Orange County, right? We have Camelot Village, that community that was ravaged by floodwaters, and also Eastgate Crossing, where several businesses were damaged by floods as well. Many business owners and residents in those areas have told me that flooding has been a repeated issue in those communities for years. Of course, Chantal, though, being the worst that they've seen of that flooding. So it was nothing new, but this time around it really did quite a number on businesses and homes alike.
When Governor Josh Stein toured some of the areas that were hard hit by Chantal, you were alongside him. You asked him why it took 10 days for the state to issue a state of emergency. I want to play that exchange.
Expand on why it took 10 days to get that state of emergency declared.
We did not need the state of emergency in the immediate aftermath of the storm because it was localized enough, and these folks know what they're doing enough that they were able to do the response necessary without the need of a declaration.
What was your impression from that exchange?
Yeah, so at the time, the governor said that he didn't need to issue a state of emergency because a lot of local emergency officials had the resources they needed to help respond properly to the flooding. And he said at the time that damage assessments were going on. That's a crucial step to getting aid, which eventually led to this past weekend, the Small Business Administration approving a disaster declaration, meaning that eligible people impacted, either businesses or homeowners, could apply for disaster loans from the Small Business Association to help get back on their feet.
That's loans. That's not money just given out to them.
Right.
Now, FEMA has not declared a disaster.
No.
What are people saying about just the struggle to get money to help them pay for the repairs?
Yeah, well, some people lost everything in these floods, right? Especially those in Camelot Village on the first floor there, ground level there. I mean, it totally gutted their units. And so they really said that they need every bit of help that they can get to get back on their feet. This is a low-income community, low-income rent community. So people there say anything that they can get to help get back on their feet would be much needed at this point.
And yet, we know that there will be more storms that they're going to have to deal with
That's
damage
right.
from.
Yeah.
Flynn, thanks.
Thank you.
Coming up, sounding the alarm over sunny day flooding. Coastal towns are facing high tide flooding. Researchers are telling local officials this is an urgent matter that must be tackled today. We'll get into it after this. Look at these pictures. Water all over the streets. This isn't from a hurricane or a nor'easter, just an ordinary high tide riding on a higher sea. New research is revealing a sunny day flooding crisis along the North Carolina coast. We're talking about places like Carolina Beach, places we frequent every summer. And the people studying this are sounding the alarm, trying to get lawmakers to act fast. WRAL's climate change reporter Liz McLaughlin has been doing some great reporting on this. Joining me now in studio. Liz, the pictures are stunning. How often is this happening?
In some places, more than a third of the year, which is way more often than previously thought. Normally, they look at tidal gauges, out in the water to see when flooding is. But this sunny day flooding project with researchers from UNC, NC State had sensors in storm drains and cameras that take pictures every 6 minutes, and found that places like sea level flooded 128 times in 1 year, 65 times in Carolina Beach. And some of those tidal gauges were just saying 30 days or 9 days.
A third of the year, and these researchers are calling this an urgent matter that needs to be tackled today, not in the future. Why are they pushing this so much?
As you can imagine, flooded streets are a huge problem, not just for residents who live there, but visitors too. Cars get trapped. This saltwater is corrosive, so roads, already aging infrastructure, are wearing away even faster. The saltwater is eating away at that. It's also getting fecal matter and other chemicals into the waterways, so it's extremely problematic, and it's only expected to get worse. Even if we stopped emissions today, the nature of the ocean would keep expanding for decades. So sea level rise is something we're going to keep seeing as much as a foot by 2050 more in Carolina Beach.
The researchers really did spell this out. I want to play a clip for you here.
We continue to be surprised by the numbers we're seeing. We never anticipated that we would end up seeing this level of frequency of flooding. But I think putting numbers to it really highlights the magnitude of the problem and the urgency of the problem, and hopefully can help get more attention and momentum behind some of these solutions. With many things related to climate change, the best time to act was maybe 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, but the next best time to act is today. So it doesn't matter what has happened before. You have a problem now, you've got to start somewhere. And so take that first step towards finding that pathway towards resilience.
There are a lot of low-lying coastal communities that are at great risk to sea level rise. And that means that they will experience more and more flood days. And how we live with flooding will change, and it will look different than how we've lived with flooding historically. It's not just from the ocean anymore. It's coming from our sounds, and at an alarming rate.
Liz, it cannot be cheap to fix this. What are town officials saying about finding the money to do this?
Sticker shock's a big part of this story. Researchers looked into some solutions, bulkheads, for instance, raising those roads or pavement, very expensive one there, and pumps to get some of this out of those stormwater systems. Those are all a lot. Back of the napkin tally for Carolina Beach would have been about $20 million. That's more than $230,000 per property. So a huge price tag there that might be for taxpayers. And we're also looking at federal funding cuts for resiliency and infrastructure funding that's not really going to help in that department.
Wow, there's a lot to unpack and to keep reporting on. Thank you. You can read more of Liz's reporting over on WRAL.com or the WRAL News app. She explains how federal tide gauge thresholds often missed the majority of those events, or in some cases, overestimated them. Now, you might be watching all of this and asking yourself, what can I do to protect myself if my home is hit by high water? It's important to know that in North Carolina, homeowners insurance policies do not cover flood damage. So if you live in a floodplain, or you live near a river, or if you live near the coast, you should consider purchasing flood insurance for your home. And I want to walk you through something. The Department of Insurance has a checklist for you to deal with if your home is impacted by a storm. It includes contacting your insurance company, making a list of the damages, stopping further damage, and making temporary repairs, as well as checking to see if you can actually live in your home. Again, WRAL.com's 5 on Your Side has a lot to do with insurance side of things. And there are several other tools and alerts that you can use to better understand what to do when severe weather hits your neighborhood. This is FRIS, or the Flood Risk Information System. The website address at the bottom of your screen here, you can plug in your address and see if you're in a flood hazard zone or near one. We plugged in WRAL's address. It's in a low flood hazard zone, but check out this one. This is Estes Drive in Chapel Hill, where dozens of people were forced out of their homes after Tropical Storm Chantal. No surprise, it is in a high-risk area. Here's another great tool, FIMAN, or the Flood Inundation Mapping and Alert Network. The website, fiman.nc.gov, again at the bottom of your screen. All of those dots represent flood gauges all over North Carolina. Purple means major flooding, and you can see that's exactly what showed up on the Haw River gauge in Chatham County. The Eno River gauge in Durham County went from purple to red, meaning moderate flooding. In the meantime, we will continue to press our elected officials about how they are using our taxpayer dollars to make sure our communities are resilient in the face of a changing climate. We appreciate you being here with us on The Record. I'm Ashley Rowe. If you have something to say about tonight's discussion, email us on therecord@wral.com.